soft thunder rolls in the distance. A low hum of clouds gathers, weaving a veil above the world. Long before kingdoms rose or fell, there were stories not written in stone, but carried in the sky. Tonight, I will share one of them. A tale of clouds that whispered, and of thunder that remembered. They called it the Skyhammer of Zeus. Not a weapon, but a wonder, born of lightning's fire and the breath of wind. It was said to hold balance, a bond between heaven and earth, shining in brilliance, resting in silence. Over ages, the hammer faded from memory, hidden where mountains echo and storms never sleep. Few dared to speak its name. Legends vanish when shouted too loudly, yet a whisper always remains, and that whisper is where we begin. A mortal dreamer listens to the skies. A call stirs, reaching beyond thunder's edge. So lean closer. Let the clouds open. This is not a story of battle. It is a story of wonder. And like every storm, it begins with a single spark. The night was quiet. Too quiet. Villagers beneath the mountains noticed first, for the air felt heavy, as though the sky itself was holding its breath. Storms usually brought rain, rattling rooftops and rushing rivers. But this storm was different. Clouds gathered thick and black, yet no drop of water touched the ground. Only thunder spoke. It was not the sharp crack that follows lightning. This thunder lingered. It hummed across valleys, echoed through trees, and carried like a voice trying to be heard. Children woke from dreams, whispering they heard names called in the sky. Travelers on the road paused, uncertain whether to feel afraid or strangely awed. Even animals stirred uneasily, restless but not panicked, as if they too were listening. Something was speaking, and the earth leaned in to hear. The elders gathered by the fire, faces lined with age and with memory. One spoke softly. "This is not an ordinary storm." The others nodded in silence. The storm brought no rain. It brought questions. Long ago, they remembered, there was a gift. Not a weapon, though many believed it so. A gift left by Zeus himself. The Skyhammer. Legends told of lightning and cloud shaped into form, forged not in fire, but in the breath of storms, a bridge between heaven and earth. It was said to keep balance, to hold harmony when skies grew wild, or when silence below grew too heavy. But the world forgot. The hammer vanished, hidden in a valley where mountains sang, and storms never rested. No map showed the way. Now, with thunder speaking without lightning, hearts stirred. Was the hammer waking? Was the sky remembering? Some dismissed it. Just weather, they said, though their voices shook. Others grew curious, restless with the pull of mystery. A young dreamer sat by the river, listening harder than the rest. They always felt the sky spoke in secrets, meant only for them. When the storm whispered, they leaned closer. In the thunder's long roll they heard it. Not words, but rhythm. A steady beat, like a heart, like a hammer striking softly against the vault of heaven. The dreamer shivered, not with fear, but with recognition. That night, a vision came, a valley of echoes, mountains like walls, clouds close enough to touch, and in the heart of stormlight, the Skyhammer. It glowed pale, wrapped in mist, vast yet weightless, radiant yet calm. The dreamer reached, but the vision faded into dawn. When they awoke, thunder still rumbled. The feeling did not fade. The call clung to them like a promise that could not be ignored. Across the land, whispers spread. In markets, in temples, travelers told of storms with no rain, thunder that sang instead of shouted. Some scoffed, some prayed. A few began to listen. Because sometimes the sky does not warn. Sometimes the sky remembers. And when the sky remembers, it calls. The whisper of the storm had begun. Beneath the heavy clouds, one mortal heart stirred. Not for power, not for conquest, but for wonder. The Skyhammer's call was never meant for rulers. It was meant for those who dared to listen. And this was only the beginning. long before whispers of the storm, before temples of marble or towers of stone. The sky itself held a secret. It was not born of battle nor rivalry, but from a longing in the heart of the god of thunder. Zeus was known for his lightning. The skies were his realm, and his power struck both fear and awe. But beneath the flash and rumble, he carried something quieter, an understanding that storms were not just fury. The sky was balance. The gods above quarreled often. Mortals below struggled endlessly. Between them hung a silence too heavy to bear. Zeus sought a bridge, something to bind heaven and earth. When storms roared too loud and words failed, upon the highest peak, hidden from mortal eyes, he began his work. Not with fire, not with forge, but with breath and storm. He gathered the first winds of creation, the sparks of dawn's earliest lightning, and the silence between thunderclaps. From these, he shaped it, the Skyhammer. It was not like weapons of the gods, not cruel, not sharp, vast, yet light, radiant, yet calm. When the Skyhammer sang, storms grew quiet. When it glowed, shadows lifted. It was more than an object. It was a promise that the sky would remember its people. Yet Zeus knew mortals well. Power tempts, even when it is not meant for conquest. So he carried the hammer to a secret place, a valley where mountains echoed like living thunder. There, among endless clouds and restless winds, he let it rest, not abandoned, waiting. Guard this gift, he told the valley, not from the worthy, but from the greedy. The hammer must answer only to those who seek balance, not dominion. The valley listened. The storm listened. The Skyhammer passed into legend. At first, mortals spoke of it in temples, at firesides, beneath the stars. They did not call it a weapon, but a wonder, something to give hope when the world grew dark. But stories blur with time. Songs fade. Legends turn to myth. Myths turn to whispers. Some said it could summon endless lightning. Others swore it could shatter mountains. The truth was lost. The Skyhammer was no longer a gift of balance. It became a rumor of power, a prize of ambition, and so it withdrew further into silence. Zeus no longer walked the peaks. The storm valley grew hidden in veils of echo and cloud, as if the sky itself wanted to forget. But not all stories vanish. Some linger like sparks, carried through generations. Oracles scratched fragments into tablets. Wanderers sang verses. Children dreamed of a glowing hammer. And one day, the storms stirred again. Thunder rolled without lightning. Clouds gathered without rain, as if the hammer shifted in its sleep. Somewhere in the world's deep folds, Zeus's forgotten gift remembered. And with memory, the promise returned. The Skyhammer was never gone, only waiting. Waiting for those who would listen. Waiting for a dreamer, seeking not power, but wonder. When the storm whispered, it was not thunder alone. It was a voice calling across centuries, silence, and time itself. The Skyhammer of Zeus had not been lost. It had only been hidden until the world was ready again. Stories say the Skyhammer was hidden where mountains could sing. But what does it mean for stone to sing? To most, it was only a riddle, a poet's fancy, nothing more. For those who still listened, the Valley of Echoes was no metaphor. It was a place, a hidden fold of the earth, wrapped in storm and mystery. No map marked it. No road led there. Some travelers claimed they had stumbled near it by accident. They spoke of cliffs where every word bounced back again and again, as though the mountains themselves were speaking. Most dismissed such tales. Echoes were natural, a trick of sound, but those who had heard it swore it was different. Not sound returning, meaning multiplied. Call out a single word, and it came back layered in tones. Deeper, softer, stronger, strenger, as though the sky itself was answering in harmony. That was the Valley of Echoes. To reach it, though, was no simple thing. It was guarded not by walls, but by confusion. Paths twisted, rivers curved back. Travelers wandered for days, only to return where they began. Winds carried voices that tempted or deceived. A call to the left might be answered from the right. A song ahead could belong to a bird behind. The land itself was alive with riddles. Only those with patience and hearts tuned to wonder moved closer. Some wandered by rhythm, not by sound. They followed harmony, not noise. Step by step, the air shimmered and the sky felt near enough to touch. At the valley's heart, cliffs rose like titans, streaked with veins of crystal. Clouds drifted low, weaving in and out of stone like silver cloth, and the echoes never stopped. A single footstep rippled like a drumbeat. A laugh became a choir. A whisper returned, as though the sky had pondered it and offered many answers. It was awe, not fear. Yet few mortals had stood there. The valley revealed itself only when the sky allowed, only when someone was ready to listen. For centuries, seekers tried. Some chased storms, believing thunder was the key. Others drew maps from fading memories, tracing paths that led nowhere. The valley cared little for effort. It opened only to those who sought balance, not conquest. One tale told of a musician with a willow flute. He played into the storm, and the valley answered with 1,000 flutes. Another spoke of a shepherdess who followed her flock. She sang to calm them, and her song wove a path through clouds. By dawn, she stood at the valley's edge, though she had never sought it. These stories scattered, told in markets and temples, believed by some, mocked by others. Yet they carried truth. The valley was not found by chasing. It was found by listening. Now, as storms stirred again, the echoes reached farther. Thunder whispered. Winds carried voices into distant villages. It was as if the valley itself was calling. Somewhere, a dreamer had already heard. They had seen the Skyhammer in vision, glowing in stormlight. They had felt thunder's rhythm, steady as a heartbeat. Their path would lead toward that hidden place, through twisted roads, restless winds, into mountains that sang. The Valley of Echoes was waiting, and in its voice, the Skyhammer of Zeus was stirring once more. Destiny rarely arrives with trumpets and thunder. It begins with a whisper. For the one chosen by the Skyhammer, that whisper came as a dream. The dreamer was no warrior, no king, no priestess of gold. They were ordinary, or so the world believed. But ordinary is only what we call those not yet noticed. Their name would slip into legend. But for now, we simply call them the dreamer. Night after night, their sleep was restless. Not from fear, but from wonder. Storms filled their mind. Clouds bloomed like ships across endless skies. Thunder rolled in rhythm, steady as a heartbeat. And always, in the center, there was light. Not lightning's flash, but a glow. Gentle, steady, patient. A shape formed within it. A hammer, vast yet weightless, radiant yet calm. The dreamer woke, confused. What meaning could such visions hold? They were no prophet, no hero, no sage. And yet, the dream returned. Each night it grew clearer. The hammer sang, a deep tone that lingered. Not a command, not a threat, an invitation. The dreamer began noticing the world differently. Rain tapped patterns on rooftops. The wind through trees whispered words. Even silence hummed with hidden promise. Villagers laughed at such notions. Storms were storms, nothing more. But the dreamer could not laugh. Something had awakened, and it would not be silenced. One evening, clouds gathered low and restless. The dreamer climbed a hillside to watch. The storm did not rage. It breathed. Thunder murmured gently across the valley. And in that sound, the dreamer heard a calling. Not in words, but in knowing. The Skyhammer was real. It was waiting. The dreamer's heart leapt with wonder and fear. Why them? They had no strength, no fame, no reason. Perhaps that was the reason. The Skyhammer did not answer dominion. It stirred for balance. And balance rests with those who listen. From that night, the dreamer could not remain still. They wandered, guided by instinct. Every echo in the hills pulled them onward. Every glimmer in the clouds lit their path. On quiet roads, they met travelers with storm tales. In markets, they overheard voices carried by wind. Fragments of rumor became a path unseen. They did not know the destination, only that they were walking toward it. And with each step, the dream grew stronger. They saw mountains crowned with cloud, heard echoes, answering echoes, felt the skyhammer so near, it burned within. Then woke again beneath stars. Doubt linger. What if it was imagination? What if they chased shadows? But the glow within banished despair. A call, once heard, cannot be unheard. The dreamer carried no sword, no shield, only questions. And questions can be heavier than armor. Still, they pressed on, not for glory, not for power, but because they could not turn from wonder. Far ahead, the Valley of Echoes stirred. Its mountains whispered across distance. Thunder matched the dreamer's heartbeat. The call had been made. Above, the skyhammer waited. It did not rush. It did not demand. It listened. The dreamer walked closer, step by step, carried by hope and by truth. Sometimes, the ordinary hear what others cannot. Sometimes, a whisper begins destiny. The dreamer's journey had begun, and the storm watched. The dreamer left their village at dawn. No one stopped them. Perhaps no one truly noticed. Sometimes, journeys begin in silence. They carried little, bread wrapped in cloth, a water skin, a small charm carved from wood. No sword, no armor, only wonder, and the echo of a dream. The road was quiet at first. Fields rolled into hills. Hills grew into ridges. The sky hung heavy with cloud. Each step felt guided, though no path was marked. The dreamer walked not by map, but by rhythm, the rhythm of thunder, far away, steady as a drum. Villages along the way spoke of storms, clouds that gathered without rain, thunder that rolled without lightning, winds that carried voices. Some feared these signs. Others dismissed them. But the dreamer listened. Each word was a thread, weaving toward the valley. One evening, the sky darkened sooner than it should. The air was thick, almost humming. The dreamer looked up. Clouds swirled in great spirals, restless and alive. Yet the storm did not strike. It circled. It watched. The dreamer stood still, heart racing. Then, like breath through hollow stone, came an echo. Not from earth, not from sky, but from both. A whisper that filled the air without sound. The dreamer closed their eyes. And for a moment, they were not on the road. They stood among mountains. Echoes answered echoes. The hammer glowed in the heart of the storm. Then the vision faded. The dreamer staggered, breathless. They knew. The journey had truly begun. The storm would test them. But the storm was not enemy. It was teacher, guide, companion. The dreamer tightened their grip on the charm and stepped forward, not into battle, into wonder. The first steps into the storm had been taken, and the valley was listening. No journey is truly walked alone. The dreamer began with silence, but soon the road offered voices and footsteps to walk beside them. The first companion arrived by chance, or perhaps by design. On a ridge, the dreamer heard the soft notes of a flute drifting in the wind. The melody was simple, yet it pulsed with the rhythm of the storm. The player was a traveler, cloaked in patched garments, carrying only a satchel and her flute. Her name was Lysa. When asked why she traveled, she smiled. To hear the world answer back. She believed all things carried a voice, valleys, rivers, storms. Sometimes they replied, sometimes they did not. But she trusted that music was never unheard, only waiting. The dreamer felt her words echo the storm's own whispers. Without a promise spoken, they began to walk together. The second companion came not in sound, but in silence. At the edge of a village, they met a shepherd guiding his flock. Broad-shouldered, steady. His eyes were like weathered stone. His name was Dorian. He carried a staff, not as weapon, but as tool of his craft. When asked why he journeyed, he said, "The sheep no longer trust the fields. The winds carry warnings. I must follow. where Lysa filled silence with melody. Dorian spoke rarely, yet when he spoke, his words carried the weight of mountains. He believed the land remembered, and storms were echoes of old truths. And so three walked where one had begun. Their paces differed, but the road welcomed all. At night, fires drew them close. Lysa's flute filled the air, the flames dancing to her notes. Dorian spoke of stars, of constellations shifting with pattern. The dreamer listened, visions glowing brighter in silence. The days tested them. Storms gathered and broke apart, sometimes without rain. The wind carried voices, playful, mocking, or calling their names. Lysa laughed, answering with her flute. Dorian frowned, steady as stone, staff in hand. The dreamer listened, knowing the echoes were real. One evening, thunder rolled like a warning. They found shelter in a cave. Their companions spoke openly. "Do you not fear?" Dorian asked. "We walk toward storms when others flee," Lysa smiled. "I fear silence more than thunder." The dreamers said little, but their hearts shifted. The road now felt incomplete without these voices. Perhaps the Skyhammer called not one voice, but many. Perhaps harmony was its true song. That night, the dreamer dreamed again. The hammer glowed in the storm, but it was not alone. It shone with echoes of music, the weight of stone, the strength of joined voices. When dawn came, the storm had passed. The path lay clear, washed clean by rain. They rose together, 3 footsteps where one had begun. 3 hearts carrying wonder, each in their own way. The dreamer no longer walked alone, for balance is never found in solitude. The Skyhammer called them all. The companions reached a land where peaks rose like teeth against the sky. Among them was one mountain taller, darker, and restless with sound. The villagers called it the Mountain of Whispers. They warned travelers not to climb, for voices there did not belong to mortals. But the storm's rhythm pulled the dreamer toward its slopes. Lysa played her flute softly, as though testing the air. The notes were swallowed quickly, as if the mountain itself was listening. Dorian frowned, his hand firm on his staff. "The land remembers," he said, "and this place remembers too much." Still, the dreamer stepped forward, and the others followed. The path was steep, carved not by men, but by time and wind. Whispers slid across the stones, rising and falling like waves. Sometimes they sounded like laughter, sometimes like warnings. At one turn, the dreamer swore the whisper spoke their name. The sound was not cruel, but curious, as though the mountain itself wished to know them. Night fell as they climbed higher. They lit no fire, for the air hummed with presence. Instead, they listened. The whisper shaped into fragments of memory. A child's song, a warrior's oath, a prayer lost to storm. The mountain was a library without walls, every stone holding a voice of the past. Lysa placed her hand on the rock, eyes closed. "The mountain does not speak," she whispered. "It remembers." Dorian bowed his head, as if honoring the silence. The dreamer closed their eyes too, and suddenly visions came. They saw storms from ages past, rolling across this same peak. They saw figures standing where they now stood, reaching for the sky. Some failed, some fell, but one, long ago, touched lightning itself. The echo of that moment still lived here. The dreamer gasped, pulling back, heart racing. The companions looked to them, waiting. "The mountain is not warning us," the dreamer said. "It is preparing us." The storm gathered above, thunder rolling like applause. The Mountain of Whispers had tested them, not with fear, but with memory, and memory had accepted their presence. When they descended at dawn, the whispers softened. The mountain no longer felt restless. It felt like a guardian watching their path. And the dreamer understood. The Skyhammer was not only power, it was history, held in echo and storm. The companions left the mountain with heavier hearts, but lighter steps. For now, they carried not only their own voices, but the voices of ages. The valley narrowed, mountains leaning close, as if guarding the path. The air vibrated, heavy with sound, not thunder, not silence, but something between. The dreamer felt it first, deep in the chest, a hum like distant voices. Each step answered the rhythm, as though the path itself was guiding them. At last, The mountains opened, and they saw it. A bridge stretched across a vast chasm, its stone arches glowing faintly. Across its span, the wind sang with countless voices. This was the Bridge of Echoing Winds. The villagers had spoken of it, but stories had not captured its presence. The wind carried laughter, sorrow, prayers, thunder woven into one endless chorus. Dorian's voice was low, almost lost in the sound. The land remembers here more than anywhere. Lysa clutched her flute, eyes wide. This bridge does not carry weight alone. It carries voices. They stepped onto the stone, and the wind rose in a wild symphony. Some voice mocked, some wept. Others called their names with eerie clarity. The dreamer faltered, hearing their name repeated over and over. It was not cruel, but insistent, demanding they listen. They closed their eyes, steadying their breath. This was not fear, it was reflection. Lysa lifted her flute and played. The melody bent the wind, weaving chaos into rhythm. Dorian pressed his staff into the stone, whispering, "Steady." The bridge pulsed, the wind softening, more welcoming. The dreamer stepped forward, choosing to listen, not resist. The voices blended, no longer scattered, now a single harmony. Halfway across, the chasm roared, the bridge trembling like breath. They paused, feeling history pulsing beneath their feet. "This bridge remembers every traveler," Lysa whispered. "It does not forget." The dreamer nodded, "And it asks us not to forget either." Together they pressed onward. The wind carried them now, lifting their steps across the span. At last, they reached the far side. The storm above calmed, the echoes fading into silence. Behind them, the bridge shimmered faintly, then fell still once more. They had not crossed stone alone, but memory itself. Their voices now lived in the bridge, part of its endless song. As they walked on, the dreamer glanced back one last time. The bridge bowed faintly in the distance, as if in farewell. And the dreamer understood. The Skyhammer was not only calling them forward, it was weaving them into a song centuries long. The valley listened. The storm stirred, and the road ahead waited. The companions descended into a valley where silence pressed against their ears. Trees bent along the path, as though listening to something unseen. At the heart of the valley lay a still lake, a mirror of the sky. But the silence was not true silence. Whispers trembled in the air, soft and countless. The dreamer paused at the shoreline, staring at the glassy surface. The water stirred with voices, secrets, confessions, prayers. "This is the Whispering Lake," Dorian said quietly. "It holds truths never spoken. Here, nothing is hidden." The dreamer gazed into the depths, seeing their own reflection first. Then shapes appeared: a child, a hand reaching, a fading smile. The whispers grew stronger, wrapping around them like a storm. Lysa stepped closer, eyes glistening, her flute clutched in her hands. A trembling melody escaped her lips, and the lake shifted in answer. Dorian's tone grew sharp. "The lake tempts. It can drown the weak." But the dreamer felt the call. The Skyhammer had led them here for a reason. They touched the water, and it felt warm, like breath. Whispers surged, and the reflection changed. Visions appeared. A leader crowned in lightning. A wanderer alone. Voice swallowed by silence. A figure broken by doubt. A figure strengthened by trust. The dreamer staggered back, heart racing. The lake judged nothing. It only showed possibility. Lysa's hand rested on their shoulder, her voice steady. "They are echoes, not chains. You choose your voice." The dreamer closed their eyes and listened. To Lysa's melody, to Dorian's quiet presence, to their own breath, steady and alive. The whispers softened, almost kind now. They seemed to say, "Walk forward, speak true, do not hide." The dreamer bowed to the lake in gratitude. This was no enemy. It was a mirror of silence. They walked along the shore, whispers trailing like shadows. At the far side, the surface rippled, though no wind touched it. The whispers faded, falling silent at last. The companions looked back once more. The lake lay still, quiet, unchanged yet eternal. But within them, its voices remained. The lake had not sought to drown them. It had asked them to remember. That silence carries weight. That words unsaid still echo. That truth, though painful, is a bridge forward. The storm stirred above, faint yet insistent. The journey was not over. They now carried something greater than courage. They carried honesty within themselves and between each other. Climbing from the valley, the dreamer understood. The Skyhammer was not only thunder and lightning, it was also silence, broken by truth. Night fell as the companions left the Valley of Whispers. Above them, storms gathered, clouds rolling like endless waves. Yet beyond the dark, a strange light shimmered. It was not the moon, nor lightning. It was something older. The path bent upward into a cavern mouth, glowing faintly. The dreamer felt the pull, a silence full of promise. They stepped inside, and the world shifted. The air was cool, scented with stone and dust. Above them stretched not rock, but sky painted with stars. Each star pulsed, not with light, but with memory. "This is the Hall of Forgotten Stars," Dorian whispered. "These are echoes of lives long past." Lyssa's voice trembled. "Songs unsung, dreams undone, stars of memory." The stars flickered, as if recognizing their presence. The companions walked softly, breath held in awe. The stars formed scenes. Laughter, labor, dreaming faces. Some shone brightly, whole and clear. Others faded, like torn pages of a book. The dreamer stopped beneath one fragile star. It showed a child, singing softly by a fire. No one listened. The image flickered, close to vanishing. "Why do they fade?" the dreamer asked. "When lives are forgotten, stars dim," Dorian replied. "The hall does not judge. It only remembers." Lysa lifted her flute and played. The fragile star brightened, the child's voice clear. "No voice deserves silence forever," she whispered. The dreamer felt the hammer's vision stir again. Power was not thunder, it was remembrance. They walked deeper, and the stars aligned. The air vibrated, a soft hum guiding them. At the center stood a crystal pillar. Within glowed countless sparks, waiting to be remembered. The dreamer placed their hand on the pillar. The hall filled with countless voices rising in harmony. The stars above blazed like dawn breaking through night. Visions poured into the dreamer's mind. 1,000 lives, 1,000 moments. Each star a memory once carried, now offered again. The dreamer's chest ached with wonder and weight. The Skyhammer was never just a storm. It was a chorus that must never be silenced. The companions stood, listening with lifted eyes. They did not speak. They did not need to. The hall spoke for them, and they understood. The stars dimmed once more, their glow soft. The pillar pulsed, then stilled, keeping its secrets. Something had changed within the dreamer's soul. The stars had entrusted them with memory, voices that would travel forward. They left the hall as the storm stirred outside. The path forward called restless and waiting. Though night pressed heavy, their hearts glowed bright. The Skyhammer was not only for gods. It was memory carried into tomorrow. Every voice, every song, every truth. They walked onward, not alone. Never alone. The companions left the Hall of Forgotten Stars in silence. The voices lingered in their hearts, like fragments of light. Above them, the storm gathered, restless and alive. Clouds twisted toward a single point on the horizon. It looked as if the sky was folding inward. Something long hidden was about to be revealed. "The threshold," Dorian murmured, eyes distant. Across the dark plain, a jagged stone formation rose. Lightning flickered in its veins like molten silver. It was less a mountain, more a wound in the world. Heaven bent down to touch the earth there. Lysa shivered, her flute trembling at her side. This is where songs end and begin again. The ground shook beneath their feet like a drumbeat. The mist thickened, glowing between real and unreal. An ancient arch of stone loomed before them. Runes flickered like fireflies across its surface. The threshold was alive, breathing with the storm. The dreamer felt a heavy pull inside their chest. The Skyhammer's vision burned sharper than ever. Oceans rising, skies blazing, voices singing in unison. The hammer was not destruction, but convergence. "Will we survive crossing?" Lysa whispered. "This is about truth, not survival," Dorian replied. The companions stood still, listening to the storm. It felt like the edge of a vast song. Mist swirled and formed into watching figures. They were guardians, half-formed and woven of cloudlight. One stepped forward, its voice like rushing wind. "You carry the forgotten. Will you honor them?" The dreamer recalled the fragile child's song. "They will not fade," they whispered with resolve. The guardians bowed, and the arch brightened. Lightning rippled, gentle as music in the sky. The way forward stood open and waiting. Lysa lifted her flute and played a note. The arch hummed in harmony, glowing brighter. Dorian pressed his hand against the stone. "Together," he said, voice steady and calm. The dreamer stood between them, unafraid. The hammer felt like a promise, not a burden. The arch flared with light as the storm roared. It was not anger, but welcome, like a door opening. They stepped forward into blinding light. For a moment, there was no ground or sky, only the sound of countless voices rising. The dreamer let the song carry them through. They opened their eyes to a new horizon. The threshold was behind them, silent and still. Before them stretched a world alive with possibility. The Skyhammer was close, near his breath. It waited as revelation, not a weapon. The companions knew the true journey had begun. The storm greeted them not with fury, but with song. Winds curled around their steps like ribbons of sound. The plateau stretched where the earth ended, and sky began. Lightning arched above, tracing spirals and runes of light. At the storm's heart floated the Skyhammer, vast and radiant. It was not stone nor steel, but woven of cloud and memory. Each lightning touch rang like a bell through eternity. The dreamer froze, breath caught in awe. This was no weapon, but a vessel, a bridge of voices. Dorian bowed, whispering, "We have come, as the stars wished." Lysa lifted her flute, glowing softly in stormlight. She played, and the Skyhammer answered with harmony. The dreamer felt the pull deep in their spirit. Visions surged, oceans singing, forests glowing, cities shining. "The hammer is unity," they whispered. "It is remembrance." They reached out, hand trembling yet sure. The Skyhammer lowered, shimmering close to touch. Their palm brushed its light, and silence fell. Not empty silence, full, waiting, alive with breath. Voices began, countless and rising as one. The hammer blazed, stabilizing into mortal and divine form. Lightning shaped a handle. Memory formed a head. The dreamer lifted it, weightless yet infinite. It was not theirs to wield, but to carry. They became a thread woven in a larger song. "With this," Dorian said, "you are never alone." Lysa's melody wrapped the hammer like silk. "You are not its master," she breathed. "You are its echo." The dreamer raised the Skyhammer high. The storm parted, revealing a tapestry of stars. Each star rekindled, each voice no longer forgotten. The hammer was not Zeus's, nor the gods', nor theirs. It belonged to every dream, every song, every hope. The plateau quivered beneath, not breaking, but awakening. Mountains glowed, rivers shimmered, valleys sang with wind. The companions stood hand in hand, hearts alight, no longer fractured, no longer silent. "This is the promise," the dreamer whispered. "Not to rule, not to destroy, but to remember." The Skyhammer glowed and settled like a star in hand. Not a weapon, but a beacon for tomorrow. The storm eased, winds soft as a gentle sigh. Dawn broke, gilding the horizon in gold. The dreamer turned to their companions, smiling. Lysa's eyes glistened. Dorian's hands trembled with reverence. Together, they stepped into the new horizon. The Skyhammer sang softly, not with thunder but memory. And so the story continued, voices carried into forever.